Welcome in, everybody. Hope everyone is doing well. Thank you so much for being with us here today. This is Adobe Summit Unpacked. We're so pleased that you're all able to make it. Whether you're at Adobe Summit or not, this session is for sure going to give you some, great insights on the event. And we'll discuss today some of the announcements from Summit and how they're going to impact your digital roadmap. I'm Clint Patrick. I lead our tech partnerships here at Northern. We've got an hour. It's a jam-packed schedule, so let's get right into it. So I'll take a few seconds here just to talk about Northern and who we are. So Northern is a 220 plus person North American digital experience partner headquartered in London, Ontario. For those who don't know, that's a couple hours from Toronto. So that's usually what we say. We specialize in unifying content, commerce, and data into intelligent systems for enterprise, commercial, and public sector clients with 100% onshore support. And while we're strong believers in AI-powered automation, we're equally committed to helping you adopt it safely with risk and compliance built in from the start. As an Adobe Gold solution partner, Northern focuses on three interconnected areas: content supply chain across AEM sites, assets, Workfront, and Firefly services, data and journeys through the Adobe Experience Platform, leveraging customer journey analytics and journey optimizer, and last but not least, commerce, where we bring it all together through the Adobe Commerce Platform and cloud services to drive end-to-end digital experiences for both commercial and public sector clients. So I know that this is definitely the part that people are most excited about. And we're going to get to a panel discussion today where we will unpack these announcements a bit further with the group. But I'll touch on these high level as well for the team today here. So Summit 2026 centered on the transition from generative AI to agentic AI. Probably no surprises there for anybody. I'm going to highlight 5 of those updates worth noting for your post-summit discussions. So Adobe CX Enterprise, this is a new end-to-end agentic AI system. It is designed to manage complex customer experience workflows autonomously. Adobe Firefly services and Gen Studio expansion. Adobe is doubling down on the content supply chain. These updates will allow brands to scale asset production while maintaining strict brand governance. Adobe Experience Platform, or AEP, enhancements. There is a renewed focus on real-time data orchestration. The platform now supports more sophisticated B2B signal processing and journey AI. Natural language AI assistance. Adobe is embedding AI assistants across analytics and journey optimizer. This makes deep data discovery accessible through natural language queries. AEM and commerce agentic workflows. Adobe has deepened partnerships with AWS, NVIDIA, and OpenAI, all the heavy hitters. These integrations bring agent-powered workflows directly into the commerce layer. So lightening things up a little bit, here's some photos of the team at Adobe Summit. We had the Northern team showed up in a major way, honestly, with our CX as a team sport branded booth. And as a first-time Summit sponsor, I can't tell you how many times I had somebody stop me in the hallway at Summit and say, "Hey, I love your jersey." So great job to our marketing team. It was fantastic. We hosted 3 at-capacity events: a networking breakfast, a content supply chain lunch and learn, and a box suite event with Addy and Adobe at the Vegas Knights game. These candid moments on the screen here illustrate the scale of the event and the level of engagement we had throughout the week. So kudos to everybody involved. It was a fantastic time all around. Okay, so the most exciting part of today, this is the meat of the conversation. I'm going to introduce the panel here joining us. So first, we have Jacques Oury, Brand Strategy and Story Group Creative Director at Red Hat. Then we have Josh Ganem joining us from Northern as a Senior Account Director, and Sarah Krauser, Senior Director of Account Management at Northern. So, Jacques, why don't you start by letting the group know a little bit about Red Hat and what you guys are about?
Great, thank you, and thanks for having me today. I wanted to introduce Red Hat a little bit because we kind of stay under the radar when it comes to what IT is doing today. A lot of our work is under the hood. Essentially, we bring open source ideas out into the open, secure them, harden them for Fortune 500 companies. That's kind of the short version of it. I love that it's a critical role that we're playing in basically the DNA of modern computing. The thing is that our tech is in so many places. You probably have unwittingly used it like 3 or 4 times just today, checking the weather or whatever. But our brand isn't always front of mind, especially when we look at some of who our like hyperscaler competitors are. So my job with our in-house creative group is tasked with like closing that gap. We need to be able to tell the story of this global brand and all the people that rely on it, even if they don't know it yet. So with Adobe, we've been trying to work on that stack with them and using it to the best of our abilities and trying to help shape it a little bit as well.
Yeah, which we'll get to in more detail here soon, Jacques. But thank you so much for setting the scene there. So let's begin with a quick pulse check. How many summits has everybody attended? And Jacques, we'll start. We'll go back to you to start.
This is my first in-person Adobe Summit. I've tracked it, for the past couple of years, just remotely, and I went to a whole bunch of Adobe Max sessions before I started moving over into the strategy area.
Nice. How about you, Josh and Sarah?
I was a newbie this year. I had dodged the conference for several years, despite being in the space for a long time, but finally got out there and had a great time.
Yeah, and this is my second. I'm not a veteran yet, but I felt like a veteran when I was there. So yeah, really excited to show up again, represent Northern this year.
Yeah, and don't sell yourself short, Sarah, because at your first Adobe Summit, you had a pretty special photo taken of you that made it to the Adobe website, if I recall. So that's pretty cool. This was my second Adobe Summit as well, and it just seems to get more exciting and bigger and better every year. So that's great. Jacques, what was your primary reason for attending Summit this year? I'm interested in how your expectations compared to the reality on the ground.
The short version is I was looking at content supply chain and brand intelligence. And, these are two kind of functional areas that that myself and my team need to get stronger in. And so, in terms of sessions and what I signed up for, that was pretty much it. I have to say though, like I used to be a copywriter and I was thick into like creative teams, and I still have a team I looked after that is Red Hat's copywriters. So I actually went in with a little bit of it's like not defensive really, but like, is Adobe and all my peers, are we thinking about words and are we thinking about copy and story enough? Are we trying to scale before we know what we're trying to scale? And if so, what does success look like when you start scaling or personalizing at scale? Like, do we know what good looks like? And does Red Hat know what good looks like? So I actually went in thinking like, I'm going to start listening for that. When we're talking about creative, are we also talking about words, language, framing, the things we don't say at scale, all those things that my team of copywriters is like listening for and going like, do these tools, can I use these tools?
Thank you, Jacques. Same question for you, Josh and Sarah. What was your primary objective for the week?
Well, I think to Jacques' point, brands are really increasingly solving more sophisticated and kind of complex, challenges, both internally and with their customers. So I think it's important for solution partner like Northern to get in the same room, in the same space, with the brand, with Adobe. I think we all have these pesky day jobs that kind of get in the way of innovating, and we have these thoughts and kind of concerns, but we can't action them because we're trying to do what we're tasked with every day. And so in a lot of ways, in an event like Summit, we're all kind of drinking the same Kool-Aid, and we're in a space where we want to get together and solve these challenges. And we're really focused on innovating and looking at what's next. So I think that's what got me excited, and I think we had a lot of kind of success with Summit this year.
Yeah, and further to that, from an account management perspective, there's always a couple of reasons that we want to show up at Summit. Like, number one, it's a great opportunity for us to get together with our partners and our clients and see each other in person. That's always great. Being able to host a lot of different discussions and workshops with our clients as well. It's a great opportunity to be face-to-face with them and really understand and validate some of the pain points that they're experiencing, and getting our clients in front of other like-minded clients so they can share. And really, with technology, it's moving so fast. So we're really privileged to be able to go to Adobe Summit every year and really just make sure that our team is staying on top of what's moving, what the latest and greatest is. Our clients are asking a lot of questions. And so it's a good opportunity for us to be able to validate the questions that they're asking and be able to get some more clear answers for them. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's like such a remote world that we live in, right? So when you get 40,000 people in the same building, it could be a little overwhelming, but the connections are fantastic and the conversations.
Yeah.
So let's move on, a little bit more of a deep dive here. So Jacques, you attended several sessions and labs at Summit. Can you tell us what your favorite was and what were the key takeaways for the Red Hat team?
I signed up for quite a few labs to get my hands dirty, and but one of the things I was really looking forward to was a session from Lumen Technologies and their VP Mariah Fredrickson, who has a journey with her creative teams and content at scale through Adobe Gen Studio. I've actually forgotten the actual name of the session, so someone could throw a link there. This is like a must watch for creative teams who are still trying to find their way with the technology, whether it's last year's Adobe Stack or next year's or the year after. They're trying to figure out how they figure into it. I just thought that her team's approach was so organic and untested that it brought up something really interesting for me, which was not just about the technology, but what did she unearth about her own teams, the people, the human beings on her teams? What kind of exposure did they get to a broader career or showing what they can do by using these tools? So the job that they had at that one was like, okay, we're going to build an agentic workflow through a Gen Studio for a campaign. But she had copywriters in Firefly working alongside art directors creating ads, which is like, yeah, that's how you're supposed to do it. And the cool thing was that I think it took some of her idea people and it expanded the vocabulary of what an idea person does out there in with these tools. And now she's got a group of folks who were sitting in the front row that were like, yeah, we built this. And I think only one of them was an art director. So it's cool. It exposes everybody to a new level of creativity, I think, through this tool. And she had just a great way of almost like forcing that in.
And Jacques, I caught that session too. And to your point, they had this kind of small but mighty 6-person team that they enabled with some AI tooling with Adobe. And they created, like the workflow you talked about, kind of created this flywheel that started with the CDP, and they had their customer profiles, and it moved into campaign planning, generating the content in Firefly, like you said, scaling the content, and then, like you said, working with paid media and the email teams to activate. And then finally, they measured it and fed it back into the CDP, and it just kind of rinsed and repeated. Did you kind of see yourself, or did you see Red Hat anywhere in that kind of workflow? Or is it more of kind of an aspirational thing? Like, this is where we need to go. This is really kind of sophisticated stuff that we need to get into.
I felt like I could go back to Raleigh on Monday morning and go, guys, let's just go do that right now. Like, let's just try that right now in a small pilot and see what happens without going through orchestration, right? Without going through a massive digital transformation. Let's just use it. We've got the tools, we've got the appetite, let's go do it. So we started our own Gen Studio pilot a couple of days ago. So like we're trying to operate small and bring the teams in to do that. I think one of the great things about that also is that groups who don't know those other technologies you were mentioning, Adobe Analytics, I need copywriters to understand Adobe Analytics better. And suddenly that flywheel becomes a learning space as much as a marketing performance space. And that's really what I think our teams need is like, there's all these rabbit holes you could go down with AI. Go down this one. Like figure this one out. And the focus really, I think, helps them feel like they're not doing two jobs, doing my day job and learning AI. They're doing both at the same time. So we're trying to do a lot more of that. And the Adobe tools are connected in a way that allow that to happen.
And I think, like, I'll just add on to that. I think what that session really highlighted is probably a lot of questions that clients are having around how does this new agentic world fit into my organization and what happens to my current talent? Like, I'm sure these conversations are happening. Are these agents replacing current talent or are they enhancing it? And that was really the overall underlying message, I think, of every session I attended, including the keynote, that these agents are not replacing your talent. They're enhancing workflows so that the output and the focus of your staff can actually focus on the things that matter to your organization. They're actually making your job easier and creating new roles and creating new processes and ways of working internally. So yeah, I'll just add that to that session. I think it really highlighted that all of these people started to learn a new way of working. It wasn't about their roles being replaced too.
There was an interesting, like, almost like provocative forcing function slide that I saw that where they had actually had an org chart. And next to so everyone looks at org charts and goes, whoa, what's happening? And then they have put an agent next to certain parts of that org chart. Not as this is programming your robot, but this is a representative of how you can scale. This is now learn the data that goes underneath how to make that agent what you need it to be. And I just like that as a it's not a thing we're doing right now, but someone's thinking about it and it's not going to go away.
AI agents in the org chart just blew my mind when we first started talking about this, but here we are.
It's not the greatest change management move, right? To show something like that. But we've got folks on the team who are eyes wide open on all this.
Yeah.
And who are trying to figure out, well, what is management's intent here? What's really happening? And I found myself on both sides of that, like, okay, I lead a team and my number one team here, my peers, we are all on the same page with regard to what an agent is and does and when it does it, which is not right now. We're building these agents to be agentic when they're ready. But for now, we're messing around with it, and the team needs to be messing around with it too.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. So I'm looking for the unobvious here, and this is a question for the entire panel. What was the most under the radar insight that you discovered during the week? Who wants to start?
I could kick us off. And Jacques, I thought earlier it almost seemed like you were reading from my notes, which I know they're not because I got them somewhere else. But when my insight came from you when we were talking, a few days ago, and I think you said you wished, I think Red Hat had started your journey sooner, and I think it can be a long road to get to kind of a modern marketing organization if you're going to clean up your data, lean into Gen AI, do more personalization, build the AI workflows, and on and on and on of all the things you can do. And it can you can boil the ocean, things can stagnate, and really, you just need to get started. You just got to rip off the Band-Aid and you got to go. And that kind of leads to maybe a second adjacent bullet or maybe a sub insight, which is go solve a single use case. It could be an internal operational use case. You can automate a manual process. You can kind of improve a workflow. It can be a KPI. You can get focused on improving engagement or improving a personalization percentage. It can be a P&L use case. Like there's a lot of things you can do, but like it's so easy to start these programs because everybody's doing it. Like the boss says, we got to launch the robots, so we're all going to go build the robots.
Turn the robots on.
But like there's a recipe where you can buy a bunch of tools and then not get value from them. So like, again, when you were talking earlier, like just go solve a use case, go do one thing, go get your hands dirty, like know what mission you're on. I think that's what everybody should kind of take away. You don't have to solve everything, but know one problem you're going to solve and go solve it.
Yeah, we have like an open source, open heavy culture at Red Hat. And so when things like this start happening, often our CMO will embrace that open part of it and say, all right, we need to see some applied AI. We need to see how this actually works. Don't give me POVs, give me demos. Don't give me slide decks. Let's see what you built. And so that's not always smooth. It sometimes can be a little chaotic if two teams are trying to solve the same problem and they didn't know it. But there's a little bit of chaos in open source thinking. Everyone was very tolerant of it. And then we built a couple of workshops where we made mini briefs and said, okay, here's a problem you could point this at. Go away for 4 days with a group of 6 people and come back and demo something. And when we finished, that was first sort of like applied AI workshop that we did with our comparatively smaller team of about 120 people. And we got some feedback after that workshop where folks were disappointed that they had to go back to their day jobs after that workshop. It was so much fun to just go off and create stuff and just see what it did. And some of those pilots are now baked into our AI portfolio of marketing enablement at Red Hat. So it's cool, like this stuff works. And those things are even testing what kind of data structure we need to have underneath it. But that's the key, I think, is not waiting for orchestration to hit its stride. It's going and trying this stuff, proving how it worked and didn't work, and executing. I think there's some there's some commodity, I guess, or there's some currency in executing right now and not just talking about it.
Mm-hmm. I think, Clint, your question was what was under the radar for me? Something that...
Yeah, anything like unobvious,
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily spoken as clearly as this, but for me, it's this zero-click reality. And this goes back to a conversation, Jacques, we had earlier this week. But when you think about the emergence and the explosion of LLM search results right now, so AI is answering questions without your users actually going to your website. They're not visiting your digital properties. So when you think about metrics, your goal is actually shifting from your search ranking to now you're the source that these AI bots are now pulling from. So I think when I think about the future of that, we're in a place where content is also being surfaced without your brand experience wrapped around it. So I think about creatives that are creating content and they're creating brand guidelines and assets and everything else. And I think it's this interesting conversation where I can see how there could be some tension with organizations around how are we going to deal with the fact that people are going to be surfacing our content, but our brand visibility is not going to be surrounding it and wrapping that content.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, Jacques, I kind of bring that back to you being a creative and having a team of creatives. Like I would assume that's going to be a bit of tension as you continue to sort of investigate this LLM space.
Yeah, I mean, the ability for a model to represent you is what you're talking about, right?
Yeah,
like, and we've gotten past the sort of functional part of like, is it even grabbing our content?
Right.
And so lots of work being done in that area to make sure that like the functional, the plumbing is all sort of there to make sure it happens. But then, like you said, my creative directors are asking it, what are people learning about us as a brand and where we stand in their lives from this chat bot, essentially? And 2 things about that. One of them is there will be ways to better ground content in data that has a sense of meaning and taste to it, with guidance around what are your brand values and what does good look like, and doing some few shot examples within a markdown file. Like, we're going to be practicing how to do all that and make sure that our content is grounded in the basically like the strategy and the opinions of some of our creatives, because we pay them for their point of view, right? That all needs to be built in there. The second thing, though, is that so many of our buyers' needs start to get explored with brands before they put their hands on the keyboard. So they will be talking to a partner about Red Hat, and they'll be like, Red Hat, I thought they were Linux. Well, we need that partner to be able to like, no, they're not just Linux, they're this. So much of these things, I think the stat that I saw is that, well, there's that whole 95-5 rule where most of your, most of your audience is out of market at any given time. Our brand tracking says that our potential buyers are actually 30% of our addressable audience is a potential buyer, which makes it really important for us to bring them to our side of the fence. But what it also means is when someone does start their journey with a brand, just learning about it, chances are they're already on your short list, right? So how do we get on the short list before ChatGPT says you might want to look at these guys? I want people to be primed before their chat starts.
Yeah.
Which is a creative opportunity in and of itself, which is like, how do we get out there and do something remarkable that didn't rely on the bots to shepherd our story?
Sharp insights. So we've talked a lot about, just execute and how, like, prioritizing all, like, everything that's going on with AI right now. Efficiency was a major theme this year at Summit. And this is a question for the panel as well. Where do you see companies wasting the most value or resources when implementing these enterprise tools?
I think I maybe hinted at it earlier, but recurring theme is buying too much MarTech, not knowing which, kind of what I said earlier. Like, I mean, you just buy too much and it sits on the shelf, and so you end up then either thinking the tools aren't valuable, or you have to go through an exercise to then trim back the MarTech stack. And then you have to go through an exercise to figure out, well, how can I use now the tools that I have left? So I think starting up front with how can we go solve one problem, I think eliminates that layer. But yeah, huge risk to just chase the shiny object, buy a bunch of stuff, and then not actually use it.
Yeah. And I'll add to that. I have a couple thoughts on that. One, I think organizations can have a tendency to underestimate change management and the value of that. So we're looking at the cost of the technology, the cost of the implementation, but we're not necessarily considering one of the biggest things is enabling your team and making sure that it's a smooth process there. So I would encourage organizations to make sure that they're considering change management and investing in creating training and the potential of new roles and sort of redefining what processes and responsibilities look like internally, whether that's an investment in money or time or organizational outputs. But I think that's one of the main things that I think people can sometimes forget. The other one I was going to say is considering AI as, I'll call it a bolt-on almost, as opposed to like, now we're moving into this world of, it's more of an operating model shift,
right?
Not just a bolt-on to what you've already got. The risk in creating it as a bolt-on is that you're going to hang on to these legacy processes. So it's how do we move forward and how do we create this vision that we're redesigning how work gets done with this tool and integrating that into our operations.
Yeah, and redesigning what the face of the work even is in the first place.
Right.
Like, you know, of course, everyone wants to have, what's my AI assisted version of this thing that I was going to build? My copy creative director, Jen Wiggs, shout out Jen, kind of rewired my brain yesterday afternoon. We were talking when she was asking the question, what is that AI can do that only it can do that we can't do, right? And so when you start looking at AI as a creative opportunity, it's a really cool thing to figure out what could we do with this that isn't just making what we do faster and better, but redefining what we even do in the first place. And there's a wide open field there that I think creatives really love to just go and mess around with. So it's like a hidden, I don't think people talk about that enough, all the creative opportunities that there are right there.
Josh, why do you think, I want to go back to your point about brands and companies buying too much tech. Why do you think, what's the number one reason you think that happens? And how can brands and teams avoid that?
I mean, it could be a couple of things. I mean, you might have a strong, partnership with the platform, and or you might end a quarter, end a year, platform may throw in a bunch of licenses for pennies on the dollar, or you could really even, like, to have a generous take on it, you could have really large ambitions. Like, you want to invest in, like, personalization, and that's not one tool that's going to do it. You need a bunch of tools. And so you kind of buy, but you don't know what each tool is solving. And I think that could be kind of a foundational reason, but because then you can't go implement 7 tools at once. Like, there's an order of operations there. You can do a couple of things simultaneously. But then you kind of start down the road and you never get to the tool 4, 5, and 6 because it's just too much.
Sarah, you said something about change management at the beginning of your answer, which I wanted to go back into, because I think I'm still figuring out how change management works, frankly, to be fully like vulnerable on this. But like, there's a lot of things to say that would not go over well right now. Coming back from an Adobe thing and unpacking it, there's a careful way to introduce some of these tool-based advances into a team that is trying to do operational orchestration and but still wants to take advantage of the tools as well. So that idea of helping people use the tools while the stakes aren't incredibly high is, I think, piloting these things is a good way to just get people's kind of hands dirty with them. It also lets them focus. But I think the change management, what I'm feeling is that the change management happens more in action and in prompts to the team than in broad statements about how we're going to be now. Revisioning things. Like, it really, I guess what I'm saying is a lot of folks are asking, how will my job change? And there's no definite answer to that. There's a lot of great things to read about it, but get into the tools and figure out how you would like your job to change. What would you lead if you could?
Yeah. And I think having, to that point, having your organization part of the new workflows that you want to create, and being part of, like, what are the use cases?
Yeah.
Where can we see this fitting within our organization, within our processes, and having your team be part of the overall governance design. Like, it's to your point, I think there's always going to be questions. I think there's a lot of questions right now in organizations. It's all you're hearing about. We're implementing AI, and what's that going to do with our jobs, and how is it going to replace us? So it's having your team part of that overall organizational structure change. And it happens in phases. And I think, to Josh's point, that's also why you don't want to necessarily go all in and buy every single tool, but implementing everything. Like, sometimes you can start small with creating new workflows and use cases and seeing where these different new features start to build. And then you've got these hands-on keyboards that are experiencing the efficiencies that this is creating, as opposed to, having questions for your leadership. They're actually experiencing it and answering their own questions too.
Yeah. It threw me for a loop when I came back and we were talking about Adobe tools. And at one point, someone said, well, what do we mean by workflow? And I was like, oh, we need to go define that word. We didn't use that word as much now as we did 12 months ago, like at all. And so what is a workflow? Okay, this is where you start participating in your craft scaling out to something bigger and you being the author of that in a workflow. And that vocabulary kind of changes over time.
Mhm.
I do think if like Webster's was doing a word of the year, like tech
Totally.
edition, 2026 is workflow. We're gonna
Yeah,
see
you'd think it would have been
workflows.
agent, but it's not agent.
No,
It's
it's workflow.
Orchestration.
I was just going to say,
Orchestration, yeah.
it is orchestration.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, maybe that's a good segue. Maybe that's a good segue for us to talk more specifically about the Adobe product announcements. So Sarah and Jacques specifically, looking at the product updates, which are you most excited about to pilot or implement?
So I attended the one keynote where they were introducing Adobe CX Enterprise as a whole. It's the new intelligent layer and all of the enhancements that are coming with that. And I'm excited to see how this rolls out over the next few months. Northern really leans into content supply chain and user engagement and brand and marketing. And so under the CX and enterprise layer, they're bringing CSC, CX engagement and brand visibility all together. And specifically around how Northern has conversations with our clients, I was really excited about that because that's how we talk to our clients. It's not just about a point solution, but it's about, what are the integrated solutions that we can bring together to actually make change. So for myself, I'm interested in having deeper conversations with our clients over the next few months and just sort of watching how Adobe shapes that product and platform, and we can understand how that fits to enhance clients' workflows. I'll throw it out there again. But yeah,
Right.
that was the one that, that keynote was super exciting to me. And I think to a lot of people as well.
Yeah, I had my ears open for brand intelligence and anything related to content supply chain. The LM optimizer was a thing where I was kind of hit me and I was like, okay, I think we've got our search folks here. We need to, they're going to manage that.
Yeah.
But when it came to, I think the thing about, we're an in-house agency, right? And one of the things that happens in-house that maybe didn't happen as much when I was with an agency is that you don't always get to protect the idea. You have to protect it through the system. There are 50 people with an agenda that touches your idea or ad or asset or even workflow. But there are a lot of people around who feel that they need to have some authorship in that. The phrase, I wasn't brought in early enough, is one of the things we all hear most at Red Hat. Part of our culture. It's great. What that does, though, is it puts more pressure, I think, on us as a brand organization to understand what a brand foundation is, how codifiable it is. And that way, we're not traveling around protecting ideas subjectively, even though trust is awesome, but we're also protecting them with, well, here's the foundation of the brand. This proves that this idea is going to fly. And so then we test it and then we get data back on that. But I think it changes an approval workflow in a really, really good way. I don't want to wait 3 weeks for an approval. I would like to ship it tomorrow afternoon. So let's put some data underneath it that allows me to do that. So brand intelligence, the one thing I would say about the brand intelligence sort of overall approach is it does seem to be based on performance data, which is inherently historical data. And it would be cool to build into the brand intelligence engine, what haven't we tried yet? Inventive, new, fresh things that build the brand and don't just maintain its engagement.
Excellent. So, Josh, I'm going to serve one up just for you, my friend. I know you went to the sneak session. I unfortunately missed it again. I didn't go last year either. Heard it was pretty good. What was your favorite takeaway from the demos this year?
Well, there were two sneaks that I think were the consensus wins. So I would actually say if you're watching the webinar, you didn't go to Summit, like pull up your calendar and like go block 30 or 45 minutes to go look at Project Face Off and go look at Project Page Turner, because those things are going to be live products from Adobe in about 30 seconds. They're hot and great. And Project Face Off was a kind of simulated A/B testing tool. So if you've ever been a part of like an A/B testing program, it can be a lot of anxiety that goes into like what you test, what you don't test. Should we just go with the best practice, or do we think our customers are unique and they're gonna like violate the best practice? And you can't have A/B tests overlap. So you kind of have a limit of tests that you can run. And there's just a million things that kind of go into thinking through that. And what Adobe has rolled out, or what they're going to roll out, is this A/B testing tool that uses simulated kind of traffic data. So we saw some very cool demos, which kudos to Adobe for doing this like live on the fly. A lot of presentations can be like overly scripted and it's not real, and like this is a real thing that they were going through on the fly. And you can load up 2 or 3 or I don't even know how many versions you could get in there, kind of different concepts or layouts for web pages, and throw simulated traffic at these different options, and you can get an idea from like kind of AI simulated traffic of how these are going to perform with your customers. And so I think it's really interesting to see kind of where that's going to go, and like how that not replaces A/B testing, but how it fits into the new A/B testing model. So, Jacques, I know we talked a little bit about this. Like, do you kind of see it like, okay, we see an 80-20 split? Do we just kind of go with the simulated traffic, or if we see the 50-50 split, is that a signal that we do need to run the manual test? Do you have an idea maybe how Red Hat would get value out of that tool?
Yeah, I mean, I loved the sneaks, by the way. I thought that was like the most creative part of Adobe Summit. It just felt like there were folks out there who care so deeply about the work that they were allowed to go do for a while, and then they got to present it, and it was great to watch. I think that if that product rolled out tomorrow, the thing that I would, I guess, frame it with is when it comes to finding out results from engagement data, whether it's synthetic or whether it's like this actually went out into market, I would urge my team to look at the results as clues rather than evidence. So one of my favorite people, Dan Carlton, he runs an agency in Durham called Paragraph Project. He prompted me a couple of years ago to think about testing, not, or even focus groups, not as this is the evidence that you should go do this thing because it won, but as what are the clues that tell you that this thing won and this one didn't. Build those clues into your next iteration and go from there. Now, there's also just which worked and which didn't. Run the one that worked. I love that. That's fine. But if you're building a brand, you do want to harness clues and not just evidence. So I think the face-off one would be a great way to then decide, like, how are you going to analyze the result of A was better than B? Why exactly? And what clues can you get from A that you can bake into your next thing that goes to market?
And then, Clint, I'm aware of our time. I know we're running out. Project Page Turner was it's kind of a dynamic website rendering tool, like in production with real customers. Of if I am searching for a blender and I say I want a powerful blender, or I want a blender for a big party, the landing page you get to is going to highlight a powerful blender for a big party. And a little scary that AI would live in the wild with your real customers, but I think there's just a ton of capability there. If you've got the brand approved assets on the back end, if you have good data foundation, there's a ton of opportunity to personalize for customers. And so that would be an exciting tool for everybody to play with and get familiar with, because it would be I don't know, it kind of knocked my socks off. And I think not there yet, but again, kudos to Adobe for doing that kind of live and not in a really scripted fashion. Really powerful, really fast. You'd also think something like that, you'd run into this problem of it thinking and it takes 30 seconds. I mean, it was as fast as any other, web product that's out there. So keep an eye on that dynamic, real time kind of web creation on the fly.
Amazing. I need to go watch that replay ASAP. Apparently, it sounds really cool. Just so everybody on the webinar knows too, you can ask a question in the chat. We will definitely get to it before the end of the call today. We don't have any questions yet, so you must be taking some very detailed notes, which is great. But feel free to use the chat. It's definitely an option. And so I know we are coming up on time, but I do want to take a couple moments here to highlight Red Hat again and put a little spotlight on Red Hat. So Jacques, your team has built one of the more impressive Adobe footprints that we've seen here at Northern, evolving from baseline analytics all the way through CDP, AM assets, and Workfront into CJA, Marketo, GenStudio, and most recently marketing orchestration through AJO. The Adobe ecosystem is clearly a central piece of Red Hat's MarTech strategy. So Josh, you had the chance to sit in on that journey being shared firsthand at Summit. I'd love for you to set this up. What does that evolution look like from the outside looking in? And what are you most curious to unpack with Jacques?
Great. Well, first of all, the session everybody needs to go watch is Driving Growth Through Connected Data-Driven B2B Journeys. That was run by Hannah Macking and Gina Franks. It's a very, I would say, almost IT-focused session, but that's really, I mean that in a great way. It talks at length about how long ago Red Hat started this journey and everything they had to go through. And it's very educational if you're at the beginning of your journey or midway through the journey, or you're getting to where Red Hat's getting, where you're actually delivering the majority of Red Hat's digital experiences now are personalized. Most of their customers are seeing something personalized across platforms and not a generic experience. Wherever you are, it's really great to dive into. So I think, Jacques, the thing that stood out to me, who was going back to 2020 or prior to 2020, Red Hat was like only on Adobe Analytics, and you had some other kind of data tools. And just incrementally every year, you've added CDP, you've added AEM assets, and are driving a lot of content inside of the DAM. You've added Journey Analytics, you've added Marketo, you've added up until now, more recently getting, GenStudio in there, and then doing some real orchestration with AJO. And I'm curious, because you're not an IT person, have you been kind of banging on the door of IT for a while to get these tools in place so you can tell better brand stories? Is this something that's happening a bit in the background? Like, how does somebody like you sit alongside this, involved IT journey?
I have a lot of trust and faith in the folks who do this every day. I mean, just calling out Hannah and Gina actually coming in from two different areas of Red Hat to partner on telling this story, but also on building, the building blocks of the story itself, and them seeing it on the ground. And we have folks whose entire job it is to really figure out what is this stack, what kind of things are we going to turn on and not turn on. And I sit there going like, okay, the mission of my team, creating one Red Hat enabled across 20,000 people in every region with creative experiences, connected creative experiences. So I have an agenda in that conversation. The agenda usually goes around to, okay, there's other folks who are way better at analytics than I am. So I'm not going to pretend that I have like a huge amount of authorship in how we do analytics. There's folks who just really know what they're doing there. Where I was starting to get interested in was with GenStudio and then with Marketo, and how quickly can we get these things usable, and not just like to market, but like testable. And that's always going to be my agenda in the room, is like, who do we need to talk to about turning this particular part of it on? So not that so we can go orchestrate a perfect system, but so that we can go try things. And I was stoked when Gen Studio came on and we were able to go, it's good at this, it's not good at this, and give a lot of feedback, and it was cool. I know Hannah was stoked about having Marketo actually just like convert a lot of great marketing insight into real results, but also and her talk is great. Their talk is great about this because it talks about like, is your stack a house of cards or is it a solid stack? And is it really, a hand that you can play? This is a great metaphor that they use. So they did all the right things. So I just, the only thing I would say is, hey, can we all do it sooner? And that's not anyone other than like maybe corporations just don't go super fast.
Yeah. The other thing that stood out from that session for me was I do think historically brands have kind of pulled different levers, and there's the lever we want to drive revenue, lever we want to get more efficient and kind of reduce cost. There's the lever to innovate and do new strategy, new frameworks, and you would pull different levers to do different things. And it seems like in 2026, those levers aren't separate. We're being told to pull all of them at once, and you need to
That's so true.
make more money, save more money, and do new things simultaneously. And when I was in the Red Hat session, I remember seeing stats that like you're decreasing cost per lead, you're increasing conversions, you're decreasing time to market, you're getting more conversions through email, even though you shrunk your contact list.
Right.
You're increasing your reach, and I mentioned earlier you're delivering more personalized, or more of your customers are seeing personalized experiences than not seeing. And it seems like you are pulling all the levers through the journey y'all have been on. You're making more money, you're saving more money, and you're innovating. And I think that's a big takeaway that we should have. If you can watch that Red Hat session, there's a lot there to
Yeah, I think that's a great way of looking at it. Like there's going to be those three pressures on every single even demo that you put out there. Yeah, but did it also do this? And going back and looking at that talk again, that would stand out to me even more now. Like it was a very well-rounded use case. That's not only changing how we market, but changing how we orchestrate.
Yeah, that's awesome. I would love to end this session on a lighter note, a funner note, because we've went through a lot. This has been just an incredible, thank you everybody here on the panel. An incredible session, so much detail. Red Hat's doing some remarkable things right now, so definitely, pay attention. The one question I have for the group here, we're all kind of newer to Summit, which is interesting within the first couple of years. What are your top tips for attending Summit next year?
Aside from wearing sneakers, yeah, that's like my main one that I always tell everyone. But I would say, go into it. There's a ton of information for you available to you. There's so many sessions. There's so many interactive one-on-ones. You can go down to the pavilion, see lots of stuff in action. So I would really plan ahead. I think you need to know the top 2 to 3 problems you're trying to solve as an organization, and try to map your sessions and your time around those specific problems. Like I said, it's just, there's tons of information that you can get, but I think if you can go in a bit more organized, I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, as a first timer, I was really depending a lot on one of my colleagues, Tom Peavis, who was really like organizing a lot of Red Hat things happening there, and of course was like tied deeply in with you, Josh, on like, when are we going to hang out? When are we going to not? And all that. And I got lucky in that I asked to be in a bunch of labs, and I tried to be in a bunch of labs because I'm not the person with the hands on the keyboard. And I wanted to understand what can these tools do and what can't they do, so that if someone ever says to me, turn the robots on, I'm able to go, this needs to do this first. and look under the hood and have a fluent, have some vocabulary as to how the tech actually works. So I guess I would say if you're leading a team and you don't have your hands on the keyboard with Adobe Stack, go get into some labs. Literally use the stuff and see what it can and can't do. And then I think if I were hands on keyboard, I would say find the sessions where you want to go talk to the person who's giving the session. Because you can go see all the sessions you want whenever, but if you want to go have a conversation before or after, emphasize those sessions, sacrifice whatever you need to do to go to those sessions and talk to the people giving it afterward. Because some of the insights I got from just about language and about copywriting and about Gen Studio came not in the session, but in the conversations before and after.
Yeah, incredible. Thank you both. Couple minutes left here, so we're gonna wrap things up. I know that everybody is excited about potentially winning a Adobe Summit pass for next year. So that is definitely happening just by you registering today, and we will announce the winner early next week. So keep an eye on your inbox. But Jacques, Josh, and Sarah, thank you so much for your time and insights today. If anyone wants to follow up on anything that was discussed today or dig deeper into these Adobe product updates, you can reach out to me directly, cpatrick@northern.co anytime. And for this group as well, we are hosting another webinar on May 20th at 1 p.m. Eastern. We're partnering with Thrivent for a practical look at the move from Adobe Analytics to Customer Journey Analytics. We're covering goal setting, data preparation, and how your day-to-day analysis will change throughout that transition. I guarantee you that's going to be an awesome session, so don't miss it. You can scan the QR code on the screen now to register or visit northern.co/events. But thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you at the next one.
Thanks, Clint.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care, y'all.